And Fails podcast. I'm just sitting around and wanted to talk a little bit today about becoming an inspector. If you want to become an inspector in 2025, what to expect, what you can do to become a better inspector faster, and who you need to talk to, what associations you need to join to help expedite that process. Now, I've been a home inspector down here in Phoenix since 2019. I've inspected a little over 1,000 homes. I'm not a super busy inspector, but about 200 inspections a year. So it keeps me busy. But, depending on who you work for, you're going to see different, payouts. You're going to have different payouts if you work for a company that is a multi-inspector firm, if you own your own company, if you decide to tackle contract work where you're an inspector on your own, but you work for another company and just subcontract out with them. There's so many different ways to be a home inspector and to get paid. The biggest thing that it comes down to is how are you going to get your work? Marketing is over 50% of the business. If you're not out there marketing and, for lack of better words, getting in bed with some really good agents that make a lot of sales, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle having enough business to feel like this profession is worthwhile. So it's important to understand before you go into home inspecting that you have to know marketing. You have to know marketing and communication. That's over 50% of the business. So when I started in 2018 training for home inspecting, I was super stressed out about knowing all of the little things that I had to call out at a house. I didn't have a whole lot of experience in construction. I have a lot of sales experience. I have a lot of customer service experience. Communication, things like that came fairly easy to me. So I had to focus a lot more on the technical side of it. So I studied hard, got past my exam. I went to inspection training school over in Chandler. Keith Smith, who sits on the BTR board, I believe, owns that. And it was an amazing introduction into the workspace. It really got my feet wet to understand what was going on. And after that training, we had to do 30 parallels. So a parallel inspection is me attending somebody else's inspection, following them around, and then writing my own report at the end, and then submitting that. So we had to do 30 of those, and you have to pay for those. And I was working a full-time job, so it took me 6-9 months to get through 30 parallel inspections before I could qualify to become a home inspector in Arizona. Those are just some of the things that you have to do for the state. You have to pass the national exam, take the 80 hours. You don't have to take the 80 hours, but it really helps you to pass the test. And then you have to be insured. So if you're going out on your own, you have to look up insurance companies and price them out. I would say for a single inspector, you're probably between $2,000 to $3,000 a year minimum, and that's to get the $1 million coverage on that most of these new houses require. So most of these new builders require that you send in paperwork before you even set foot on the property. You have to send in proof of insurance. You have to send in usually your auto insurance as well, and then sign off if you have workers' comp or not. And different builders have different regulations, and that's another thing we can tackle on another video. But when you're getting into inspecting, who you know makes a big deal. Who you are in contact with. If you're working with a slow inspector that doesn't have a lot of business, you're probably not going to learn as much because you're not going to be as busy. So if you can find somebody to do some parallels with that is fairly busy and has good turnover, I would try to contact them and see if you can do parallels with them. You have to learn in the field. It's not a book learning profession. You can understand codes and things like that. We're not code inspectors, but you still have to understand a lot of the code. And that changes often. So if you're doing new build inspections, you're going to have to stay current on a lot of that code. Every year or two it comes out and it changes, you're going to have to know that. If you're doing resale properties, you're doing stuff that's 15, 30, 70, 100 years old. So there's so many different building materials involved when you start talking about older buildings. Because if you're just doing new construction, you're doing stucco, post-tension slab, wood truss up in the attic, your basic house. But when you start going back in time and seeing those older houses, you're going to see things that you have no idea what you're looking at. And you have to research it, and then that is what stacks up your experience. So the more experienced home inspector you get in touch with when you first start will help you. It's hard to tackle this profession by yourself. There's a lot of inspectors that have done it. And I tried to do it in 2018 when I started my business, Property Inspections Plus. I did about a half a dozen inspections, and it was really slow, and I got nervous, and I thought, I kind of need some more inspections coming in, otherwise I can't make this a full-time job. I had quit my other job, and probably too soon, because I didn't understand how serious marketing was and how hard it is to get in touch with the agents that actually produce. By produce, I mean they make the buys, they make the sells, they represent more transactions than most of the other real estate agents. 20% of the agents do 80% of the work. And those 20% of the agents, they already know home inspectors. They've been in the business for a long time, and they're that good because they probably know a really good home inspector. I'd like to toot my horn and say I'm a really good home inspector and I'm maybe the best, but I know there's a lot of better people out there. I know there's a ton of inspectors that have more experience than me in the technical areas, and maybe I have more experience with them than them in the communication and marketing, but it's still a struggle every day when you don't have an inspection. If you wake up and you don't see anything on your board, you have to put your shoes on and try and contact some people. That is the whole idea of home inspecting. If you don't have the inspections coming in, you're going to find this career dissatisfying. And there's been several bumps in my road, and luckily I've got a supportive household here and a wife that has supported me through it. But not everybody has that. So you might have to keep a full-time job until you have enough people in your portfolio that will give you work on a consistent basis. I'm saying you'll need 4 to 5 inspections a week just to feel like you're actually bringing in some money. And that's in Phoenix. It's different all over the country. Our rates that we get down here, we're about $400 to $500 per inspection on average, just for a typical home inspection. And that involves a lot of things, but we can go above and beyond that and sell a sewer camera inspection. We can sell infrared. Most of us don't sell infrared, we just include it because we use it on a daily basis. It's become so easy for us to just pull out an infrared camera and scan something. It's become almost as common as a screwdriver in most home inspections. And that's great. That's better for the buyer. Technology has helped out home buyers a lot in that sense. 20 years ago, we couldn't find missing insulation in an attic space if there was no crawl space up there. There was nothing we could do about it. So technology will help. So you're going to have to get familiar with the different tools and technology. This is Jerry. And really price out your options. When you're first starting, you're going to want to buy a thermal camera or some tools. Don't buy the super expensive stuff at first because you might not like it. And that's going to eat up a lot of your money. And if you only have a limited amount of money, just buy the standard screwdriver, the multi-tool screwdriver. Just buy the infrared camera on Amazon. That's $350 from Vietnam, because the FLIR one is going to be twice as expensive. They're good. I love FLIR. I don't see too many problems with people complaining about how good FLIRs are, but you can find much cheaper technology that does just about as good, and you don't need to spend $2,000 on a thermal camera when you're becoming a home inspector. Most home inspectors, we're just looking for anomalies. It doesn't matter if it's 200 degrees or 150 degrees in most instances. It matters that there's a spot that's 150 degrees and there's a spot next to it that's 50. And then it's like, what's going on there? Because with those temperature differences, you're going to have moisture buildup. You're going to get condensation. So when you see those stark differences, it's kind of a call out to us. So I'm getting off track talking about tools. So when I started my company in 2018, I did a few inspections and I thought, I need more coming in. So I got in hold of an inspector friend that I went through training school with. His name was Randy, and he got me in touch with this company, BPG Inspections. And I worked with BPG for 5 years. I was an employee, so I was put on the fast track when I got in there because I had some experience. I went on maybe 2 or 3 inspections with my manager before they let me just go out on my own. But the onboarding procedure was maybe 3 months, 2 or 3 months. It took from the day that they hired me until the day I could start inspecting and making money. That was a huge problem, and I think they were trying to fix it when I left or before I left, but the onboarding process is just ridiculous with them. And they're based out of Georgia. There's nothing wrong with the BPG inspection company overall. There's a lot of great inspectors with BPG. A lot of the people that I've learned from over the last few years have been from BPG. Some of the BPG employees are high up in ASHI. I think the vice president, one of my trainers from BPG is on the ASHI board, vice president this year. So there's different companies to look at. I decided to go with BPG because I thought that they would give me a few more inspections just willy-nilly, oh, we got this random one coming in, because they had 4 or 5 inspectors at the time, and I was on the east side of Phoenix, so I kind of had this area locked down. Everybody else was on west side or north or south. And I waited for the inspections to come in, and it was slow. There wasn't much difference between working for them and working for myself because I wasn't doing the marketing. It wasn't that I couldn't expect them to provide me with a whole bunch of inspections. I thought they would, but they didn't. I did get a lot of turnover when somebody in the company became sick and they couldn't work for several months. I was doing many inspections for them, just trying to take care of their business and their clients. And I got to meet a lot of real estate agents that way. And there's probably a few in there that continued to use me even after that employee came back. And it's just how you talk to people, how you communicate, the rapport that you have with an agent is going to make it more likely for them to recommend you down the road. Well, it's thundering out here. So it's hard as an inspector when you make a mistake and you don't know if you made a mistake. Let me rephrase that. It's hard when you don't get rebooked by an agent and you don't know why. You don't understand why they didn't rebook you, or maybe they're out of the field. It's a weird profession for us to be in, and if you're not in constant contact with the real estate agents that use you on a regular basis, you're going to have those doubts oh my God, I'm not getting any inspections from this agent for 6 months. What's going on? You either have a constant, replenishing of those agents that are going to call you, or you have to go market. There's no way around that. You have to market in this business. And it's a struggle to figure out what's the best way to market yourself. I've gotten an opportunity or an offer, I guess, not an opportunity. Maybe you would call it an opportunity, but more of an offer from a big national real estate agency that wanted me to be in their magazine. And I said, let me come in and talk to you. So I sat down at the table and they showed me. It was a 1/4-page ad, put my thing in my little advertisement in their magazine that goes out to just the people that have bought from them or just their agents. And I'm like, well, it's not really a big publication. It's more of an internal magazine, which is fine because you could pick up some real estate agents there. And he said it would also open the door for me to come in and present to their agents. And that's just the way that things have been working. I know some inspecting companies that actually have offices on the backside of real estate agencies. It's just a weird thing. You're not supposed to have a conflict of interest, but there's conflict of interest all over the place, from paying inspectors or paying agents for the referral to paying agencies to be a preferred inspector. That really shuts the door on many of us individual inspectors that can't compete with that anymore. And what does it really do? Where is the money going? So to be a preferred inspector, these agencies will ask you to pay money. I was asked, I think it was like $1,500 for that magazine ad that would give me an opportunity to come in and talk to their agents, which the agents that would be there are not necessarily the low-hanging fruit, but they're usually not the top producers. So you're paying to buy in to just advertise to their agents. It didn't really feel like a very good fit for me. You know, a lot of inspecting companies that might overlook that and just pay the money to get an opportunity like that to talk to agents, because it works. There's tons of home inspecting companies that works for, and it's worked for years, and they're doing great. And that's kind of why they become multi-inspector firms. They have the connections that a lot of us individual inspectors don't have. We haven't had the experience or the time in the field or the clout of the company to go out and retain a lot of these real estate agents. And that's okay. We just have to try harder. And that's where social media and YouTube comes in a lot. We have to do a lot more marketing to the home buyer. So somebody that's actually wanting to buy the house sees me on YouTube or sees me on Instagram, and they schedule an inspection with me. Instead of going directly to the agent, I'm going to go around them and go directly to the home buyer or the home seller, however it may be, because most of these agents, I go on the weekend and I do open houses. I'll do 6, 7 open houses on a Saturday and then on a Sunday, depending on the day. Most of them, they'll give you the time of the day. They'll talk to you and they're really nice. And I've gotten several jobs out of open houses, but most of them, once they know you're an inspector, they just want you to get out. And you can feel it, you understand it, but that's part of the hustle. You just got to have a thick skin. You just got to go in there and say, this is me, I'm proud of my company, I'm proud of what I do. You would be proud of me too if you used me. Here's an opportunity for you to use me, and give me a call if you can. I don't mind being a Plan B inspector. If your regular inspector can't make it to the inspection, or maybe they're booked out, give me a call. I'd be happy to help you out. Or you toss in hey, for your first home inspection, if you refer me, maybe we'll do a free complete thermal scan of the house for them, and I'll show them all the thermal deficiencies, or maybe a sewer camera inspection, just to get them kind of understanding what you can do. And I don't want you to give away your services for free. Sewer camera inspecting equipment is expensive. I think I'm $2,000 into the camera and $2,500 into my locator. It takes a long time to pay that off. So giving away free sewer cams is not always your first bet, but don't discount it, because I've thrown in free sewer cams just to say thank you, just to say, hey, thanks for using me. I knew the sewer cam was going to be easy, but I did it anyway. Your client didn't pay for it. I just wanted to know what's going on in the sewer pipes. And now your client knows too, and they're happy, and everybody's happy. We can move on. There's been several times where I've recommended a sewer cam, and we go in there and we find major problems, and nobody was expecting it. Maybe it was on a house that was in a state, and the owners of the house died, and the sons, daughters went to sell the house, and they didn't know what was going on with the house. They're just selling it as is. So those are the most important times to get a home inspection and a sewer camera, because you have no idea what's going on, especially on an older home in certain neighborhoods. But if you want to be a home inspector, it's an uphill battle. It's a very rewarding career. I love coming home at the end of the day and knowing that I helped a company or helped a client out understand a home better, point out some things that they would have never saw, save them a ton of money. Most concessions, I think the average not that long ago was around $10,000. So we go in there for $400 or $500, and they end up getting around $10,000 off because they asked for repairs. So it's definitely worth your while in most cases. If you can't negotiate, then there's not much you can do about it. If it's just an as-is sale or for sale by owner, something like that, and no parties are involved, you might not benefit from it. But when you're becoming an inspector, you really have to focus on what your plan is. What's your future plan? What type of inspector do you want to be? Nowadays, we have kind of two different avenues of inspecting. We have the regular resale inspector, the guy that goes out and inspects, or girl, any house. You do a typical home inspection on any house. But now we have so many new builds and so many problems with these new builds that the home inspectors have to kind of fill in a void, because the code inspectors for the city, the building inspectors, the city inspectors, county inspectors, they're signing off on crap. They're signing off on stuff that should not have passed the final inspection from their company. So these companies are out here bragging about billions of dollars in profits, and we have all these home buyers out here, oh, I got a great deal on this house because it was $20,000 cheaper than a resale house comparable that was 20 years old. It's great until year two comes along and you start seeing all the stucco cracks and things because they were rushed and it was inferior materials. So a lot of the times I recommend people look at houses that are like 30 years old, like a 30-year-old brick house in Phoenix here, phenomenal. You put some dual pane windows on it, you know, the thermal balance of that is really what I'm getting at, and the quietness of it. These hollow wood houses, they're just, you know, they're not going to last forever. So you could go down the avenue of being a typical home inspector, or you could go down the avenue of becoming an ROC inspector and doing ROC inspections, workmanship standard inspections. And that means you would go out and spend more time at the property and actually look at all the Board of Technical Registers. They have workmanship standards of practice, basically. So that goes above and beyond a typical home inspection. And a lot of people book me and they say, hey, can you put blue tape on all this stuff? Do you do all that? And I'm like, it's not a typical, that's not a typical home inspection. That's not what a home inspector does. You have to sell it as a warranty inspection or an anniversary warranty inspection, 11-month inspection, because a lot of that stuff in your house is warranted on a brand new house for up to the first year or two, depending on the builder and where you're at. So you have leverage if you get a home inspection done by an ROC inspector. Now, I don't do ROC inspections. I never have. There's never been a huge demand for ROC inspectors until, you know, it started getting really big on social media down here. Several inspectors started doing ROC inspections and pointing out a lot of these details that the builders were completely screwing up. So, you know, the stucco was cracking like crazy. You could see the wire mesh through it, and it still goes on today, you know, all the time. The weep screeds are terrible, cracks in the tiles, cracks in the concrete, missing insulation, all these things that the builders should be taking care of. Now you have to go in there and take care of it. If you want to be an ROC inspector, you have to go in there and inspect it, write it up, give it back to the homeowner, which can submit it to the builder at that point. And the builder at that point is going to either fix it or deny it. And then you have a legal case on your issue, or a legal issue on your hands. So if you want to be an ROC inspector, you can specialize a little bit more in those new builds. You can specialize in new code technology that's coming out in new houses and kind of focus on that. And it's not necessarily a harder inspection. You're just looking at more things and you're taping things up to help the client. I do a typical home inspection, so I'm making sure that everything functions fine. I'm making sure that there's no major problems. I might sprinkle in a couple comments about workmanship standards, but I'm not charging for that. I'm not charging for that type of inspection usually, unless they want me to get an anniversary inspection. So what I'm doing is a typical home inspection, sewer camera inspection, mold inspection, or indoor air quality, and it's surprising how many new home buyers want a mold inspection or an indoor air quality inspection. They just don't know. They don't trust the builders anymore. They put these houses half up and then they sit out here in the desert for months on end before they get siding on them or even a roof in some cases. So you've got these obstacles that you're going to have to tackle as a home inspector or becoming a home inspector, which avenue you want to go down. You want to tackle both of them, you can, but sometimes agents see that you do ROC inspections and agents are going to be like, I don't want to use that guy because he's going to ruin my deal. And that's just kind of the headaches you get. But if you go directly to the home buyer, they're going to hire you. If they have the money to do those ROC inspections, which are typically 2/3 more in price, maybe twice as much. They do take more time, they're more thorough, they check a lot more of the cosmetic things than a typical home inspection does. But not everybody thinks that's necessary. Not every new house needs a complete ROC inspection because some builders are really good. Majority of the time they're not. Majority of the time these new houses have so many problems in them because they're so rushed. They have so many different people doing the jobs that nobody has any account for what they've done. But there's a couple different associations that you can get involved in if you're looking at becoming a home inspector. There's INTRNACHI, there's ASHI, International Association of Certified Home Inspectors, which is, I think, over 22,000 members right now worldwide. And ASHI, American Society of Home Inspectors, which has, I think, 2,000 or 3,000, a little bit smaller. ASHI has been around a bit longer, and when I started, it was kind of the the feeling I got that ASHI was kind of the old dogs in the hunt. So they've been in the business for a long time. There's a lot of experience in ASHI, but what they really lacked on was the educational part of it. They weren't educating new home inspectors. They were there to support the old inspectors, but not helping new inspectors become better. And that's where INTRNACHI shines. They do online education. Ben Grimico, Nick Grimico, they do amazing work putting all that together, and all the crew that is at INTRNACHI. I've watched them grow since 2018. I think I became a member. And I've never become a member of ASHI, but ASHI did play a larger part in writing the standards of practice in Arizona than INTRNACHI did. So ASHI actually helped the state of Arizona write the standards of practice. So you can put some clout in ASHI, and there's a lot of good training material from ASHI, even from down here with Brick by Brick Inspections. He teaches a lot and did a lot when he was part of the ASHI. I don't think he's president anymore. I think somebody else became president. But they have a meeting down here in October. INTRNACHI has a meeting in January. I strongly suggest that you find a local chapter and start going to those meetings and talking to home inspectors and getting a feel for what it's like being an inspector, Because if you're out there on your own, you have no peers. You have nobody to compare yourself to. Am I doing better? Am I doing worse? How am I inspecting this? How are you inspecting that? Oh, I like that idea. Why am I not doing that? That sounds brilliant. And you have no idea that these opportunities lie right before you by just going to these association meetings. There's a lot of different things to look at becoming an inspector, but really marketing is what it comes down to. You really have to be your own marketer. You have to push yourself. You have to sell yourself. And if you're not comfortable doing that, then it's going to be a struggle. There's a lot of people, I'd say the majority of people that become home inspectors are from the construction trade. So they come in from being an electrician or carpenter, roofer, things like that. They know a house. They're pretty good at the technical aspects of it. But when they become an inspector and they start talking to agents and home buyers, they don't know how to use words properly. So they scare a lot of home buyers, and then the real estate agent never uses that home inspector again. There's a lot of people that are real estate agents that become home inspectors too because they like the flexibility. They like the freedom of becoming a home inspector. And granted, that's one of the reasons I wanted to be a home inspector. And how free can you be if you're at a multi-inspector firm and they're constantly giving you work? You can be fairly free. Depending on what company you go with, you just tell them that, hey, I'm taking a week off here. It's kind of nice because you would have a backup inspector. And as a solo inspector, I struggle with that right now because if I take a week off to go on vacation, I don't have anybody to fill in for me. I don't have anybody to take up my work and assist my real estate agents to keep them from going to somebody else. And that's a struggle. And I feel like if you're going to be a home inspecting company, at least having 2 people is maybe the bare minimum, because you got to keep the ball rolling. And every once in a while, one person in that ball might have a hiccup and get hung up on something. You need somebody else to pick that up and just keep it rolling, keep that momentum going. And I'm going to get there. I have utmost confidence that, the people that I've worked with in the past are very happy at the job I do, and we've created some really good rapport. It's just I'm one guy, so it's taken a while. And my first year doing this, I started this company again in 2019 because of all the crap at corporate level I just couldn't deal with anymore. What it came down to is they were taking a large percentage of what I brought in as a home inspector. And when you realize that most of your home inspections come from the legwork that you put in, the open houses that you go out and do on the weekend, that's money out of your pocket. They're not compensating for you to go out on the weekends to meet agents. They're not giving you money to go do that. So when you bring somebody in and then they take 55, 57% of everything that you went out and brought in, it's a knife in the back. It's a hard pill to swallow. And I just couldn't take it anymore. I was doing 200 inspections a year, but I just wasn't making enough money to make it justifiable to be a home inspector, so I wanted to start my own thing. I love doing what I do. I love helping the people that I have helped, and seeing all the different houses, it's awesome. I love it. It's something different every day. But you think about how much education goes into becoming a lawyer, becoming some doctor. 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, they have to know a lot of stuff. You're expected to know everything in every house that's ever been built in less than, a few months, because there's no degree that you need to go do. Some states don't even require that you get certified. All you have to do is tell them, hey, I'm a home inspector, here's my past history, and they'll approve you. I think North Dakota is like that. Here in Arizona, you actually have to pass tests and fingerprint background, and that's another headache to talk to you about too. You have to take your fingerprints to get access to a lot of these houses that are vacant. So Department of Public Safety does a background check on you and everything. Oh, we're getting a storm warning. Nice. Well, I think the storm already passed. We're just getting kind of a haboob right now. But that's kind of the gist of it. You guys and girls, there's great opportunity out there to help people. And that's why I became a home inspector, because I love going into different houses, something different every day, traveling around and seeing something and helping different people out. But if you can't handle a strong marketing campaign, if you can't go out and sell yourself every day, it's going to be a struggle just to make enough money to stay in here. So go out and pursue that dream of being a home inspector, but just know that you need to sell yourself because nobody else is going to do it for you. You need to get those people out there. Some people will sell you for doing a good job. So if you work for a lot of good agents, they'll tell their friends. If you work for a lot of good clients, they'll tell their friends. Eventually the name gets out. You start getting recommendations from people you've worked with in the past. Old real estate agents that you haven't heard from in years will send a recommendation. And then you'll find out that, you'll wonder why haven't had an inspection with this real estate agent for 2 years. And then you call them up and find out that, oh, I'm a teacher now. I became a teacher a year and a half ago. So don't get stressed out if you think you have a repetitive real estate agent and you don't hear from them for a while. If it worries you a little bit, give them a call. Just talk to them. Just let them know that you're there. Send out some feelers. But it's a long job, and writing reports is probably a struggle for a lot of you just starting out because you don't know what's expected. If you can get your hands on other people's inspection reports, maybe some of the people that you're shadowing with, and scan them and just kind of see how they're doing it. It's not always going to be right, but you're going to get an idea. And the more inspection reports you see, the more comfortable you're going to be with your own inspection report when you see it. There's so many different call-outs you can use on houses, and I would strongly suggest you focus on your weakest points. So I know my weakest point, and I focus extra on that to learn, to educate myself so I know what I'm looking at. And some of the things that I'm really good at, I still learn about. I still get ongoing education from Internachi or ASHI. There's Brick does some really good electrical webinars with, God, I can't remember his name, but it's on the Arizona ASHI website. You can just log in and pay for the webinar and get some continuing education credit. It doesn't work for Internachi, but you can do it for ASHI if you'd like. So if you guys have any questions about becoming a home inspector, I'm going to see if there's anybody on here. Don't see anybody on here asking any questions. But it's a great career to get into. You just have to pace yourself in the beginning and find the right people to communicate with. Don't get yourself in bed with a home inspector that's a sourpuss, that hates real estate agents. He's been in the business for 10 years and doesn't want to tolerate dealing with real estate agents and their stupid ideas, and they're never on time, they're always late, and they're always showing up with the wrong CBS code. You know, just do your own thing. And you let all that stuff stress you out, just like any career, it's going to hold you back. So people are people, they're good and they're bad. And becoming an inspector, you'll realize that you just have to be yourself and stand for, you know, your job, your profession, know what you're responsible for. Setting expectations with the client on site when you get there is a big thing. That's probably number one thing that you should do anytime you do an inspection. When somebody shows up, you sit there and do the driveway speech with them and tell them, hey, I'm looking at everything I possibly can, but this is a visual inspection, non-intrusive. I'm not going to take anything personal out of this house, move anything personal if it's occupied. If it's vacant, it's not that big of a deal. There's still a few areas that are hard to see, maybe a couple corners of the attic or, you know, inside the walls, inside the plumbing pipes, in the walls. There's going to be some of those areas that you have to get used to just telling the client, I cannot see them. I cannot see them. I did not inspect it because I could not see it. Typical flat roof, you can't see the structure unless there's some opening on the side or in the air register that you can actually see the structure. But even if you can see the structure, you're not going to see very much of it because there's no room in there. And the client's going to ask you, well, how's the insulation in the attic? And you're going to say, I can't see it. I can't see it. I can't visually inspect it. But I pulled out my thermal camera and I scanned the ceiling, and there's 2 hot spots over in this corner. So I can guarantee you that this is going to get warmer on a hot day than the rest of your ceiling, and there's probably some missing insulation up there, maybe from an old roof leak. Sometimes the water will get in and wash out the insulation, and then you won't have any insulation again. So you have to know how to formulate your words to not scare everybody, but tell them exactly what's going on. You're not there to make stuff up. You're not there to try and pass a sale. You are there to give them facts. You are paid to stay in your lane. Don't go in there and say that you're going to need $12,000 of repairs on this. You're a home inspector. You're a home inspector. You're not an electrician. You're not an HVAC tech. You're not a roofer. You don't need to give out estimates unless you have ties to a roofing company or an electrician. You don't have to give out estimates. Just tell them ballpark estimate. This is going to be several $1,000s. Don't back yourself into a hole where you say it's going to be 4 and it ends up being 8, and then they don't like you. So it's okay to tell them, no, I don't have an answer for this. You're not expected to answer every single question that they have. And that's okay, because that's liability. That ends up going down to liability, and you start speaking your mouth, running your mouth on stuff that you don't really know about. And I'll admit it, sometimes I get carried away. My mouth just keeps talking and talking and talking. I have to remind myself to just stop. Sometimes I'll say too much because I really know what's going on. I've seen it in my house. I know how much it costs to replace, but it's 20 miles on the other side of town. I don't know what the contractors over there are going to charge. When I did my repairs, it was 2 years ago, and the price of materials has increased. Inflation has increased. So if I were to spit out an estimate, it would be a complete ballpark, and I don't think my client deserves that. My client deserves an actual number. If they're asking for a good estimate, they should get it from a professional. So you refer to professionals. We're not here to give our opinion. We're here to give you a referral. So we see a problem, we make a recommendation to a professional. Most home inspectors don't refer to companies like roofers or electricians. I started doing it because I found a few companies that were really good at what they were doing. And I had a lot of faith that they would be there for my client and help them out. So I started recommending them. And I don't make any money from them. My clients are always asking me if there's people that I can trust and work with. And I'm like, yep, there's a few companies. But, I also tell them that if they screw up, it's not on me, man. And I want to hear about it. If something bad happens and the people that I referred are not doing their job right, yeah, I want to hear about it because I'll quit referring them. But become a home inspector. Everybody should aspire to want to know more about their home. And some of us aspire to want to know everything about our home. And to be able to find all the little stuff in here or in a house that, can cause a problem or is maybe a safety issue. And houses that are like 20 years old, they inherently have more safety issues because we have become a safer people. We have made better practices to keep people safer. For instances, better smoke detectors, better carbon monoxide detectors. So upgrading these things in your house is usually the best thing to do. So if you guys have any questions about becoming a home inspector or being an inspector that does ROC inspections, I can guide you or at least point you in the right direction for people that do those type of inspections. I think they're a great opportunity for a new inspector to get into the ROC line, because if you focus on that, you can just focus on that and you'll probably stay busy because there's so many new houses being built. But eventually you'll have to do resale houses. So at some point you'll have to go back in time and deal with the stuff with the brick chimneys and everything like that. But if you guys have any questions along the way, any concerns about like, what do I need to talk to? What association is better? They're both good. InterNACHI, I've been with them since the beginning. Like I said, they're better for training. So I would jump on there and become a member just to get all their training and suck it up, because you can take as many classes as you want for their membership fee. And I love that part about it because I wanted to dive in. So when I got there or got the membership, I just started taking class after class after class. And then when things are slow and you don't have any marketing to do, which you should be marketing anyway, but you should be training. And if you can just log on to InterNACHI or ASHI and just have all these different things available to you to give you credit and train on demand on your time, your schedule, it's just an amazing, opportunity for you to get some education in. So I'm Home Inspector Dan. This is the Tales and Fails podcast. I hope to bring more information from you or to you down the road. I actually want to do some traveling. I want to go around the country and meet some inspectors. I've been talking about that for a while now, and it's just I've been trying to build my business here and get it financially, stable enough to where I can do a little bit of traveling. But like I said, if I take off for a few days, I have nobody to fill in for me. So if you're another inspector in a different city across the country and maybe you want to hook up and do an interview with me, I'd love to come out to where you're at and do an inspection with you. So you set up the inspection, let me know when it is. We'll go out there and I'll just kind of interview you. And I want to know what other inspectors experience on different types of houses all across the country. I want to know what type of houses are all across the country. I've done a lot of traveling and saw a lot of things, but I haven't been in a lot of these houses. So I would love to do that. If you guys have any ideas for that or any, offers to do some traveling and inspecting, let me know. But we'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching. Sorry, I had this planned for 9 o'clock this morning, and the internet went out and weather, just couldn't get to it till 12 o'clock. So next time we'll be on time. Thanks for watching, guys.